Welcome to the Guardians Quick Hits. As you can see, it's just One Eye and myself this week. So we're going to do a little more informal thing where we just kind of read what happened this week in the world of Overwatch and kind of discuss it. It's been a fairly quiet week this week. There were some announcements, there were some teasers that we're going to go over. But really, we're used to this big flurry of activity, and there wasn't much. So we just figured, instead of doing a full episode, we'll just do kind of a quick little informal thing to catch you up. So there were two big announcements in the world of esports this week. First off, Rise Nation, which is a big FPS organization, has joined the Overwatch scene. The previous roster of Winky Face, minus Dyrus, their biggest name, has been acquired by the organization and will be competing under the new banner. The roster is Nibs, Xander, Moji, Dr. Riku, and team captain R&R. And if you remember, we had a guest a couple weeks back, Jamerson, and he is rounding out their roster, taking Dyrus' spot. And we hope they have success, and we really can't wait to see them compete, because Rise Nation is big in Call of Duty and Counter-Strike. They're one of the big three that people think of when they think FaZe and Optic. Rise is the third one. And then also, literally about an hour ago, Gale Force Esports and their Overwatch team parted ways. The roster will continue forward under their old name of Code 7 as they look for a new competitive organization to call home. And meanwhile, Gale Force is already assembling a new roster to compete under their banner. We wish them both the best of luck and look forward to seeing them both do well. Now, I had insider knowledge kind of behind the scenes that this was going to happen with Gale Force, because Gale Force expected something and the roster kind of expected something else. So it was really just a difference in vision. What are your thoughts on these two positive and negative things that happened this week, One Eye?
As far as Gale Force is concerned, it's definitely unfortunate. Regardless of whatever see or hear on Twitter and all that jazz, it's never fun to see players and organizations disagree and have to part ways. But it seems like a good organization, and it's definitely a strong team. So the fact that both of them are continuing going forward, I think, is good overall. Even though there's a little bit of bad blood there and a little bit of drama and all that jazz, it's nice to see that people aren't backing out of the scene, because we want Overwatch to be healthy. We want it to be competitive. We want it to have lots of teams and lots of people to cheer for. So it's a bummer, but it happens and the world moves on. I mean, you and me have both done competitive stints, and I can definitely attest to the fact that management and players often have disagreements. You're pretty lucky if it doesn't happen all the time, and even luckier if you have management that is just totally understanding and ex-players, things like that. But the world will continue. Mm-hmm. And then as far as Rise Nation is concerned, I could not be happier. Winky Face is an exciting team to watch, even without Dyrus. I mean, you were at Agents Rising, you know what I'm talking about. Yes. The best match of the whole tournament was played by them. And so the fact that these players, and not to sound a little biased, but particularly Nibs and R&R, are actually getting picked up by a team is fantastic, because they deserve it. They're an exciting team to watch. They play well. They're competitive. They're friendly. Easily one of my favorite teams that we spent time with at the event. You know what I mean? So I couldn't be happier for them. And the fact that Jamerson is rounding out their empty slot too, I mean, it's bordering on fan fiction at this point, So, as far as I'm concerned, even though the whole Gale Force thing's, sad, I think it's good overall, especially in the case of Rise Nation.
Yeah, I mean, and I expect the roster to continue on, Code 7 is going to continue on. They're going to do well. Gale Force, they're going to pick up a team. It's just a matter of who, and they're going to do well because they have a really big, successful Here's the Storm team. They have a really big, successful Overwatch following. There were a lot of people there cheering for Gale Force at Agents Rising. So, I mean, I'm not too worried. It's probably for the best that they split. And then, Rise Nation, I absolutely love Nibs, and I couldn't be happier for him. And Jamerson, I sent him a congratulatory DM on Twitter the minute I read that, because it's that guy, I didn't even know he was looking for a team. And all I knew is that he was a caster. I didn't know that he was such a good player. I actually looked up his stats, and I was like, wow, this guy actually has some chops behind his play. But, it's definitely good for the world of esports. Both of these announcements, I think good will come out of it. And like I said, we did have insider knowledge with Gale Force leaving. Tifa, who was the manager, had been keeping us surprised of what's going on, and so that we were kind of informed, and we do have knowledge that there are some organizations sniffing around, not just for this roster, but in general. So for competitive Overwatch, there are some big things coming, so make sure that you guys stay tuned and check the newswire, because there's a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline that hasn't been announced yet that will be coming. Shifting focus, though, there was a tweet that went out, and it caused the internets to go ablaze, and that was an image of a support sniper rifle. And on this image, you can see Torbjorn and Mercy both offer thoughts on this, and pretty much everyone kind of went crazy because the rumor mill had been spinning about Sombra. There are already files, audio files, with Reaper. He says, "Where's Sombra when you need her?" And, people are saying Sombra might be Farah's mom, Sombra might be this. They're talking about a support sniper. Well, Blizzard said, you know what? We're going to take your Reddit detectives, so your internet detectives, and we're going to show you that your hard work is paying off. Here's an image. We're not going to say this is tied to anything. We're not going to say this is a character or anything coming out, or that it's coming out soon, or in the next 6 years. But here, this is something we were working on, just to kind of give you a bone to chew on, and it made people go nuts, and everyone was talking about it. I know we talked about it. What do you think it means for Overwatch that this picture was tweeted out of this support sniper rifle that uses the same kind of technology that you see? It almost looks like a canister that Lucio uses in his gun, and the fact that Mercy, they had these dialogue of Mercy kind of adding her thoughts on this. I mean, you can tell based on Mercy chiming in, it's going to be something that deals with the support role.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, first off, I just want to say Sombra. I'm calling it now. I've been saying it for months. Sombra. I don't care. If I'm wrong, I'll eat those words, but really don't think I am. So Sombra, point one. Yeah. Point two, rereading the actual, looking at the picture and saying what they comment on, it's interesting because it's more or less an argument between Torbjorn and Mercy about whether or not the rifle should be used offensively or defensively. Torbjorn's making the argument that this new biotic rifle, while able to heal allies, has lots of damaging potential and should be used as such, and Mercy's saying that she's been opposed to it being used as offensive technology since its inception, and the biotics rifle, etc., etc. So we are getting a support sniper just like we thought. It was a little bit harder to say when that argument first started coming up, because originally that concept was based off of the fact that around launch, one of Blizzard's behind-the-scenes videos, you could see somebody playing on a computer behind them, and they had a sniper, like somebody posed like Widowmaker with a long rifle in the support slot. And everyone's like, oh, a support sniper, it's coming. So we've been talking about it for a while. Yeah. And this schematic pretty much confirms it. It's set in stone. We're getting a support sniper at some point, and my bet is Sombra. The argument that a lot of people have been having is what exactly she's going to do, right? So how exactly do you have a support sniper? And obviously, besides the fact that we see this biotics rifle as both a sniper rifle and also incorporates factors of Mercy's beam technology and what appears to be some sort of canister, maybe a mine, maybe a venom mine, something like that. In my opinion, I wouldn't be too wildly surprised to see something like Val's design in Evolve by Turtle Rock Studios. Also, I guess that's kind of on topic since it just went free to play, so I guess try that. But the way Valve functions, or at least did in Evolve, was that her sniper rifle, offensively when used, would deal minor damage, but debuff the monster, right? So we could potentially see something like that, where the targets she hit become more vulnerable, or slowed, or something like that. We could see a design where shooting allies heals them. I don't think that's something that's completely off of the table, especially looking at the schematic, since the part where Mercy's staff is drawn to the sniper rifle is actually in the barrel itself. And then I wouldn't be too surprised if we saw something like an AoE healing grenade either, something like that. Just judging by A, the canister technology, and B, potentials with the kit. Because that's how Val worked. I know that they changed the game a little bit in the free-to-play relaunch. but you would debuff the enemy and hit them with your sniper rifle for damage, and then you would have an AoE heal that you would position and heal allies with. So, like, that would be my guess, is some sort of offensive sniper rifle with either crowd control or debuff, and then some form of AoE indirect healing. Not necessarily like Lucio in that it's constantly passive, but something with a cooldown. Mm-hmm. So that would be my bet. But Sombra, support sniper, hype. She's coming. Or somebody's coming. Maybe not Sombra, but it's Sombra.
Yeah, and I think we're using the term sniper kind of very loosely, because when people think sniper, they think headshots and very precise. But you can see in the picture, there's an arrow pointing almost to a canister, but it looks like it has like a tripod of sorts. Like she's going to fire something, like her alternate fire might even be, or her shift or her E ability, might even be something where she fires it down. It provides like a zone of healing or a zone of buffs.
Yeah, a deployable, something like that.
I mean, and it's very hard to kind of tell what they're thinking just from a picture, but you can kind of wean a bit of information, and you can also see that the scope that's in this picture / schematic is also the scope that people were going nuts about a few months back when they had that picture that somebody tweeted out that they saw a developer was working on, and has that triangular shape, which goes in line with what Sombra's supposed looks like. If you see in that dossier file at the beginning of Temple of Anubis for the attacking team, it's got that triangle on it, and then the scope was circular and it had the triangle on it, and this is that scope from that. So I mean, you can start to really connect the dots and see that that's where we're moving towards. So we'll have to see what the actual abilities are and what this rifle does, what everything the canisters mean. But I think we're on the right track with our line of thought.
I definitely think it seems like a safe bet. I mean, yeah, nothing's for sure, but we have enough evidence to make an educated guess for sure. Like, for sure. It's going to be Sombra, and it's support sniper. It's happening!
It's happening!
Yeah, it's coming. Mark my word. But after going over that this week, we also did have a small patch. Not a ton of gameplay stuff as far as actual playing is concerned, some things, but the big focus of the patch was balancing competitive play. Because competitive play just hit live, and while people are enjoying it, it definitely has some big issues that are starting to become apparent. So the first thing that they patched in, keep in mind this is PC only, is the duration of sudden death has been adjusted across all maps from 1 minute and 45 seconds to different values. So what that means is for the assault maps, Hanamura it's 1 minute and 35, for Temple of Anubis it's 1 minute 30, and for Volskaya it's 1 minute 35. For the escort maps, Dorado is 1 minute 30, Route 66 is 1 minute 35, and Watchpoint Gibraltar is 1 minute 35 as well. And then as far as the hybrid maps are concerned, King's Row is 1 minute and 30, and Nubambi is 1 minute 50, which is actually 5 seconds longer. It's the only one that got extended. The only map that didn't get any timers changed on it is Hollywood, and it still stands at 1 minute 45. And this is kind of addressing the issue with sudden death, because sudden death has a lot of issues with it to begin with, since there's such a bias for the attacking team. But we can see that Blizzard's trying to reduce the timers to help sort of ease that advantage that Assault has over defense. Another thing that they did was they put in some bug fixes. Once again, these are PC only. But they fixed a bug that prevented overtime music from playing on Escort and Assault maps if the payload was nearing the final checkpoint. They fixed a bug where display settings weren't saved after restarting the client, which is something I've dealt with a lot, particularly switching between computers the past week. They fixed an issue that sometimes caused the in-game UI to display incorrectly at 4K resolutions. And they fixed a bug where sometimes the wrong player level would appear in the social menu. Some more competitive stuff that they worked on was, this is a PC only, they fixed a bug that caused the top 500 icon to incorrectly display for certain players. They also fixed an issue where if you left and rejoined an in-progress competitive play match, the game would still track the match as a loss in your placement history and when determining the amount of skill rating you receive, even if your team won. So even if you had like a quick disconnect and rejoined, you would still get a loss if your team won, which is not necessarily fair. I think we can all agree. And then in order to be eligible for the win, though, you have to be present for the conclusion of the match. So if you leave a match and do not rejoin before it's over, it will still count as a loss, regardless of if your team won. You can't abuse the system like that. And then they also fixed an issue where you would still receive a competitive play leave penalty even if you rejoined a match and completed it. Because nobody really wants to be penalized for leaving if they just have an issue and just have to restart and hop back in. So those are the big competitive fixes and bug fixes on my end. What were your thoughts on them, Veritech?
Well, first off, I have 2 accounts that I play Overwatch on. One is just kind of, I play kind of quote-unquote serious, and then one that I was going to use kind of for viewer games and just solo queue competitive, because there are times where people won't want to play competitive, and I will, so, I'll go ahead and queue as that. So between the 2 accounts, I have about 35 games of competitive. And I've actually played competitive before this patch with the sudden death, and then after it. And I think you and I actually were playing right immediately after the patch dropped. And I think we were playing Volskaya. We saw that minute and 35 seconds because we had played the week before, and it was a 2-minute sudden death. And all of a sudden it was a minute and 35, and we went, oh, okay, cool. And then the patch came out, and we saw the timers. I think it's good that they're dropping it because there were too many times where that one final push in the last 10 seconds or even overtime, the team then would win, and the attacking team would win, and they would win sudden death, and you're like, well, that's kind of crap. That felt a little too long. So the fact that they're dropping the timers, in my mind, is a good thing because it kind of gives you that sense of urgency that you're supposed to feel in something like sudden death. We're like, all right, this is our final chance to win this match. If we don't win and they stop us, they win. As far as assault goes, escort, it's the same thing. I've seen it on Watchpoint Gibraltar. Normally on escort maps, the escorting team has to get to that first point. On Watchpoint Gibraltar, because that first point is so close, they actually made it so you have to get to the second point. And so you have a minute and 35 seconds to get there. And I think it kind of creates more of that sense of urgency that you're supposed to feel in sudden death. Now, it's still a coin flip. People still have a coin flip. An issue with the coin flip and how sudden death is determined. But the fact that they lowered the times really, I think, is a good idea. Now, I will say, kind of on a caveat, they said that they're going to fix the issue with competitive play, how the lever penalty is going to be fixed. As of this morning, I think somebody tweeted out that it's still not working as intended. People are still getting hit with losses. Even if you leave and join back in, you're still getting a loss, and then sometimes the team that had the lever is still being recorded as a loss even when they win. So although they're talking about patching it and they're attempting to patch it, it's still not working as intended. So they're going to go back to the drawing board, I'm sure. And then the final little thing that I kind of want to touch on is I got into a little mini argument with somebody about the graphical bug about the top 500. Somebody said, well, they were complaining because they had a 42 skill rating, and they're like, well, I'm still going to be playing because I want to keep that top 500 rating. And I went, yeah, you're not top 500 if you only have a 42 skill rating. And they went, well, I can see the icon. Obviously, I'm top 500. And I went, if the top 250 stops at 73 skill rating, it's a known graphical bug. So the fact that they fixed that is nice because it was showing up for me during placements last week, and it's like, I know I'm not top 500, I'm just a scrubby, filthy casual, but it shows that Blizzard is putting some thought, and they're rapidly trying to fix some of the systems that people feel are flawed, specifically with lowering these times during sudden death. And I think it kind of gives it that sense of urgency that we really need in something like sudden death.
I think it's good, and I think the concept of sudden death is inherently tricky too, which is why Blizzard said that I'm pretty sure this is going to be the only season with it. Because attacking teams have a very strong bias. The way that a lot of the maps are designed is that the attacking team at the start of a match can get to the point a lot faster. Their team can die and respawn and, push again without really too much of a penalty. And then the closer you get to the end of the map, it switches so the defensive side gets the advantage because their spawn's right there, right? So how do you remove that advantage without making it one-sided so that you have a fair sudden death with a coin flip? I think using points that aren't necessarily the first is a great step. I was super happy when we saw that on Volskaya. I think lowering the timers is also huge because a lot of these timers you're only going to be able to wipe and respawn once or twice. You know what I mean? So there's still that pressure of it's sudden death. You only get like a shot or two to do it. And I think that's really important. I think that removes a lot of the bias towards the assault team. So I think that they're good steps. I really like them a lot. And then as far as bug fixes are concerned, all that's good stuff. There was a lot of graphical glitches with different things showing up on people's screens during ranked games. Like, I know the 64 rating, that's one we experienced. I even sent you a picture on my phone. I was like, whoa, dude, you're 64? Like, so it shows that Blizzard is paying attention to what people are saying and paying attention to the game. And it's important because there are a lot of people that I know of, at least, who one of their big concerns with buying Overwatch is it's a multiplayer-only online game. If this game doesn't do well, then I wasted money because it's never going to get support. And Blizzard, I mean, has a track record of absolutely ridiculous support for their games. But this shows that, nope, it's still Blizzard. They're still paying attention. It's going to be taken care of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, Blizzard has been showing all along during this whole process. You know, we're listening. We really want to take your ideas into consideration. And there was something on Reddit. I didn't add this, but I'm going to add it now. There was something on Reddit that one of the biggest problems with Zenyatta is the fact that he has no mobility and he has such a low health pool. And an idea that somebody brought up that I really hope Blizzard listens to them on, is they said, how about instead of his right mouse button being a charge-up offensive attack, which feels kind of clunky with his kit and his transcendence and kind of his lore, Zenyatta is supposed to be Genji's teacher. After Overwatch put him back together, he's supposed to be Genji's teacher. Let's make it so that instead of charging up and firing, he charges up and spins his orbs, kind of like a deflection, where like Genji reflects back, Zenyatta just kind of deflects. So it's kind of like the student learning from the master and making it better. So it's just a very rudimentary, like makes him invulnerable. It's like a 2.5 second channel, and then he has to reload. Kind of like what Lucio's alternate fire is, where there's a cooldown on it. That way you can't abuse it. And I really hope that Blizzard listens to the community on that, because that's a really good change. And
it's super clever.
Yeah, it is. And just going back to kind of how Blizzard listens, I mean, they have a track record in Overwatch's very short lifespan of seeing somebody's idea on the forums or on social media and going, yeah, that's a good idea, and kind of doing their own thing. So the TLDW of what I just said is Blizzard listens. It's very promising that they do listen, and it really kind of shows that they want to make the game the most enjoyable for all skill levels, not just casual and not just competitive. So I think they found a nice balance with those timers, but we'll have to see over the long term how it plays out over, skill level 1 all the way up to skill level, I think 86 is the highest right now. I think there's one person at 86. So 1 all the way up to 86, if it feels fair, that entire skill gap. So,
and it's nice too, like even though I play the game and I enjoy it, one of the big issues with League of Legends, if you ask the community right now, and I think it's a valid complaint, is that the game is entirely balanced around competitive. So if you're not a competitive player, you're not somebody who plays ranked, the game isn't going to be balanced in a fair way for you, because you're still going to have to play a meta, because that's how it's balanced. So it's nice to just see Blizzard spread the love, They're not focusing too much on any one group, and I think that's a smart move. This game draws in a really large and diverse crowd, so it would seem silly to neglect any of them.
Yeah. So, and then there's also some other minor bug fixes in this patch. Most notably, something that somebody had called out on social media. They were a Mercy main, and they said, well, this is different. Is this a bug or what? And that's her beam would disconnect from its target if the player had quickly switched between healing and damage beams by holding down both mouse buttons, which I've been known to do when I play Mercy, or that they were facing away from the target at the time of the switch. Before, it used to be if you were 180 degrees and you were locked onto a target, if you quickly switched, it would just kind of continue. And this bug had caused Mercy's to not be able to hide. And the problem with Mercy is she really has no protection if somebody gets into the back line. And so that was kind of her way of hiding and kind of staying alive a lot longer, because we always joke about, the life of a Mercy is to res and die. And you see that a lot where, she would get a 2, 3, 4-man res and immediately die in like a play of the game. And so this was causing her to stick her neck out a lot more. So they fixed that bug so that she's able to switch between her healing and damage without having to get back into the line of sight of the person she's healing / damage boosting. And then the other thing, because people like to exploit, was they were using Reaper's Shadow Step to get to unintended locations on certain maps. And I know that there were some on Dorado and there were some on Gibraltar that people were able to exploit, and then they were able to get up super high, drop down for a Death Blossom, and people really didn't even see it coming. And one of the things about Overwatch is it's good to keep tabs on your opponents, and if you can't see them and all of a sudden they're on you, it really kind of causes some frustration. And I know a couple weeks ago there was bugs with Torbjorn's turrets on Dorado, and people were kind of complaining about that because they were able to lock on and shoot through walls, and that was fixed, and now Reaper's Shadow Step bug / exploit has been fixed. I mean, and then there were some other things, like Zarya's alternate fire, the damage was scaling incorrectly, they fixed that. Winston's melee attack during his Primal Rage ultimate, it would inconsistently cause damage to targets in range. They fixed that, and then there was collisions not blocking line of sight in certain areas of Nepal. They went ahead and fixed that bug. So it's more like kind of balancing quality of life, fixing some exploits and bugs that people found. But again, just echoing what we've been saying all along. Blizzard listens. They pay very close attention to make this game the best possible experience for all players, and this just goes to show that they're paying attention.
Especially in the case of like small, tiny bug fixes, like Zarya's alternate fire scaling incorrectly. Like those aren't bugs that you're going to necessarily catch unless you're listening to your community. So, yeah. I mean, we've been saying it the whole episode. We've been saying it the whole time we've been doing this show. Just, once again, props to Blizzard. Part of the reason I really like being in their community of gamers is that it really feels like, as a company, they care about the people who play their games.
That's very true. That's very true. Well, that just about covers it for this week. Do you have any closing thoughts, OldOneEye, before we go ahead and wrap up this quick hits?
Nothing really. Hopefully next week will be a little more exciting. I think with the tournaments going on and just the fact that it was a shorter week as far as patch stuff is concerned, sort of shortened the episode, but I had a great time. I actually really like doing these in these format, and I look forward to next week. So.
Yeah, sounds good. And don't forget to check your Twitch listings because there will be some more tournaments coming up this weekend. You have your Gosu Weeklies, NA and EU. You got a bunch of other events that were just announced. Jamerson's going to be casting one with Ask Joshi. You've got a bunch of stuff coming out. Make sure you go and watch those silky smooth voices. ZPs is going to be casting a lot of stuff. Hexagram's going to be involved. So don't forget to check that out if you are interested in Indie Competitive. But for now, we'll go ahead and end this. You can catch us next Friday live, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, on Twitch and YouTube Gaming. Just search Veritech or Veritech GG, and you will find us there. But for now, my co-host OldOneEye and myself, I am Veritech, saying we will see you next week.